Hello everybody, this is Toshi the Panda coming back to you with a very special occasion. This is actually my 500 subscriber special. 500 subscribers, how about that? Never thought I'd hit that far, huh? Hi, this is Future Toshi cutting in to let you know that at the time of recording this video, I have actually 501 subscribers. I kind of made this a little late because I had only just found out last night that I had 500 subscribers, and it was a little too late for me to make a video and I was really tired. Okay, back to the video. So I was thinking about what to do for my 500 subscriber special, and I figured, why don't I talk about one of my favorite movies in a discussion video? So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. This is a video of me talking about why I think that The Messengers is not only a good horror film, but it should be held up there as what to do when making a horror film. And I'll get more into detail about that as the video goes on. First and foremost, I'd like to say, for the record, that everything in this video is my opinion, and I'm going to assume that my audience are adults and they know how to react when someone gives their opinion on something. So if you happen to disagree with me and what I say in this video, that's fine. Perfectly okay. To each their own. We all have our own opinions. Just please be respectful about it in the comment section. If you have a point that you want to argue against me, please do it in a respectful, mature way. Second, major spoiler warnings for this. Although to be fair, this movie came out in 2007, so it's kinda old. Not that old, but still fairly old, so I'm assuming all of you have at least seen it by now. But still, spoiler warnings in case you haven't seen it. Oh, and by the way, I know this movie also has a sequel. I never actually watched it, and I don't plan to, because this movie really honestly didn't need a sequel. So I'm not even gonna bother making a video on that. Just the first one. Okay, now let's get into it. So first and foremost, a brief explanation about what this movie is about, and then I'll talk about why I think other horror movies should emulate its style. So The Messengers is a 2007 supernatural horror film directed by the Pang brothers and produced by Sam Raimi. Yes, that's Sam Raimi, the same one who brought us the Evil Dead movies and the original Spider-Man trilogy. You know, the one that was memed to death. Anyway, now for a brief rundown on this movie's plot. But the movie opens up with a terrified mother trying to escape her house with her son, while an unseen force attacks her son, and her teenage daughter. By the end of it, all three family members get killed. So we jumped 5 years later to the Solomon family moving from their home in Chicago to a small town in North Dakota. The father of the family, Roy Solomon, who is played by Dylan McDermott, I hope I pronounced that correctly, he is moving the family hoping that starting a sunflower farm will be perfect for them and help to overcome some of the issues the family is having. The family consists of him, the mother, Denise Solomon, who is played by Penelope Ann Miller, and the daughter, Jessica, or Jess Solomon, who is played by Kristen Stewart. Yes, Bella from Twilight. I think this is actually what she did before that. Anyway, and they also have a young son named Ben, who is played by Evan and Theodore Turner. I'm assuming those two are twin boys, so we got like a Full House situation going on here, where two twin kids were playing the exact same character. Anyway, the family has a few issues that we'll get into later. For now, let's discuss on them actually moving into the house. So they come across the house that was shown at the opening of the movie, and already a lot of strange and scary things seem to occur. Flocks of crows start constantly swimming around the house. Some of them even attack Roy, but they get driven off by a new character named John Burwell, who is played by John Corbett. How do you like that? John playing a John. Kind of typecasting there. Anyway, this new guy shows up and he helps out Roy, so Roy decides to hire him as a farmhand. That was when other things start happening. Ben, the little boy, who happens to be mute, more on that later, he starts seeing ghosts around the house. Ghosts of the original family that lived in there, the mother and the two children. Then the girl Jess also starts seeing ghosts too. She sees a woman walking around the sunflower patch. she follows her into a barn and then finds a ghost of a little boy who then attacks her and injures her. She's taken to the hospital for her injuries, but her parents merely assume that it was her who inflicted these wounds on herself. After getting into an argument with her parents, Jess runs away into town with a friend that she made, a boy named Bobby. I don't think there's any... Oh yeah, there is here. He's played by Dustin Milligan. Never mind. Anyway, while they're in town, Jess tells Bobby the reason why her relationship with her parents is so fractured. It's because a while ago, Jess was driving drunk with her younger brother Ben in the car and ended up crashing. Ben was seriously injured, and not only did he endure extensive treatment, which, well, put the family heavily in debt, which is why they're moving in the first place, but it also resulted in him being mute. And that's why her parents don't really trust her all that much, because of what happened. Explains why they don't believe her when she said she was attacked by a ghost. Meanwhile, back at the farm, John is attacked by a flock of crows. Meanwhile, Denise is putting Ben into bed, and that's when she sees the ghost woman coming out of the walls. Like, literally coming out of the walls. It's really freaky to say the least. That's when she finally believes her daughter was right about the ghost and starts frantically packing to leave. Back in town, Jess is looking around inside a local store and finds some newspaper clippings on the wall. She looks and finds out a shocking twist. Turns out the farmhand was the father of the family that died in the opening of the movie. Back on the farm, John Burnwell, who is actually revealed to be named John Rowlands, he murdered his entire family in a fit of rage, it seems. And now that he was attacked by the crows, he starts losing his mind again. He sees Denise rushing to pack and leave and thinks that it's his wife Mary and starts attacking her, forcing her to take Ben and run and hide in the cellar. Bobby and Jess come back and they get attacked. Bobby gets knocked out by John while Jess runs into the cellar finding her mom and brother, to which the mother her mom apologizes for not believing her about the ghost. Then Roy comes in, finds Bobby knocked out on the floor, and tries to find the rest of the family. He finds him in the cellar, but then gets attacked by John, who stabs him in the back with a pitchfork. During the struggle, Jess knocks John backwards into a mud puddle that had formed on the floor, and then his ghost family starts pulling him under. He tries to pull Jess under too, but Roy and Denise come in and pull her out just in time. And after that, Bobby, who got up during this, calls the police and paramedics, and they come to take Roy to the hospital. But not before he has a moment with Jess where they finally reconcile. Cut to an undisclosed amount of time later, everything seems to return to normal. The family is happy, their lives are restored, there aren't any more crows attacking the farm, and also, little Ben starts talking again. So that's the entire plot of The Messengers. What did I think of this movie when I first saw it? Well, I think it's pretty good. It's a solid A, yeah. Yeah. It's not perfect by any means, but it is a pretty good horror film nonetheless. Now, on to why I think other horror movies should emulate this style. And in order to do that, I need to talk about my opinion on current day horror movies as a whole. I have nothing really wrong with the horror genre. I've actually, in the beginning I wasn't really a fan of it, but that's because starting out as a little kid, you're always scared of scary movies. Always. But then after you grow up and realize they're just movies, you start to appreciate them a little bit more. You think, yeah, this is all fake, but the amount of effort they put into it to make it seem real, it's really impressive and admirable. What I don't like is horror movies that don't put in the effort to actually convince you that it's real. In other words, they're just doing it simply to make a quick buck, or that they think it's profitable, which is why I have a problem with the current model of horror movies these days. It seems like every movie that comes out, it's always some variation on 3 different styles. It's either a remake of a movie that came out way back in the 1980s that most people probably forgot about, it's another variation of The Conjuring or Annabelle, something horror, like haunted house kind of thing, oh it's spooky ghost and whatever, or it's just another one of your generic slasher movies, like serial killer goes around killing people for some unknown reason or whatever, and then we find out later, and then at the end of the film he's dead, or maybe, I don't know. I mean, because there's like a million freaking Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and even now there's a million Halloween movies. Like, I don't even get that one. I understand, like, something with Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger's a supernatural serial killer, so I'm guessing it would be impossible to kill him off permanently, but Michael Myers, there was nothing supernatural about him at all. He was just some guy who went nuts. I know, I saw the original Halloween. I think the only actual good movie that actually gets it right would be Rob Zombie's remake. I know that's a hot take. A lot of people don't like the Rob Zombie Halloween remake, but I think it's fine. The first one anyway. The sequel's a pile of trash, but the first one is okay. And I get tired of that, honestly. If that's what horror movies are turning into, I don't blame other people for liking it. If that's what you like, fine. But for me, it's just not. Why do I think The Messengers is a good example of that? Okay, so first I'm gonna bring up some things that I see in horror movies that I really don't like and explain how The Messengers does it better. Firstly, if there's one thing that I don't like a horror movie doing, it's giving us a cast of characters who you just want to see die. You know, the typical cast of characters in a horror movie are your generic dumb teenagers, and they're always like doing really stupid things. Oh, they're constantly partying and doing drugs and being complete assholes to each other. It's boring, it's dull, and not to mention they act so obnoxiously that when they start dying, you don't feel scared or worried for them. You're actually just sitting there thinking, oh, finally! I was waiting for the serial killer or monster to show up and kill these guys. Yeah, that's something I hate. If you can't give us characters to root for, why would I even be watching this movie in the beginning? Now, why does The Messengers does that better? The Messengers has a cast of characters that are not only likable, but sympathetic. Aside from the guy who turns out to be the villain of the movie, but that's fine, you're supposed to hate him. John Rowlands, the guy who murdered his own family that turned into ghosts that are haunting the house, he's the villain of the movie. You're supposed to hate him. And I'll admit that the character Bobby doesn't really have that much of a character. He's just there to fill his role of best friend of the protagonist, who helps with the problem a little bit. But he's not a bad character per se. It's not like he's obnoxious or too perfect. He's just a regular guy, and it's fine. But the family itself, Roy, Denise, Jess, and Ben, as a cast of main characters, they're pretty good. Especially the main character, Jess. You can tell that they were trying to write a sympathetic teenager who's just trying to get along with their parents. And I believe it. Because when you think about it, both her and the parents, they're both in the right and in the wrong at the same time. Yes, Jess was in the wrong for driving drunk with her brother in the back seat. She shouldn't have done that. And, well, you can't blame her parents for being distrustful of her. But at the same time, you feel sympathetic for Jess because it's like she's trying so hard to reconnect with them. She wants to build their fractured relationship. So much so that you kind of feel bad when after she gets attacked by the ghost, her parents won't believe her. But you understand where the parents are coming from. Like, she was drunk driving with their young son in the back seat. He got really hurt, which resulted in him getting seriously injured. They had to pay so much money for his treatment, and now he's also mute. So you can understand where they're coming from why they distrust her. To the point where after everything is revealed to all be true by the end of it, you can actually feel, when they apologize to each other, and then when their relationship is rekindled by the end of the movie. It's satisfying. And that's what I think most horror movies should do. Give us characters that are sympathetic, that we could root for. Characters that you don't just look at and say, oh, these are annoying piles of crap, I wish they'd die already. No, with this movie, it's like, oh, I feel really bad for the parents, and I feel bad for the teenage daughter. I hope nothing bad happens to them by the end of the movie. Then when freaky stuff starts happening, you get really freaked out and scared. You're like, oh, I hope none of them get killed by the ghost. But then it has an extra layer on top. When you find out who the real villain of the movie is, you're like, oh, the ghosts aren't the bad guys. They were actually trying to warn them. The real bad guy is John Rowlands, because he's the one who killed all the people who became those ghosts. He murdered his own family. And then he goes crazy and tries to do the same thing to Jess's family. But this time, they fight back and they survive. And because of that, the relationship has been restored. That's something all horror movies should do. Give us a cast of characters that we can root for. Aside from someone who you want to intentionally make as the person who you can't wait to see die, let that just be one person. For this one, it's John Rowlands. He's the guy who murdered his family. He's the villain of the movie. You feel satisfaction when you see him get pulled in that mud pit, probably down to hell by his ghost family. And you feel satisfaction at the end when that happens. It's when he's gone, the hauntings stop, and the family gets to live on happily. Now, what's another thing that this movie does that I think other horror movies should do? Another big one is that some horror movies rely way too heavily on jump scares. Like, so much. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jump scares are not scary, okay? When you put a jump scare in something and somebody gets freaked out by it, you're not scaring them. You're startling them with a flashing image and loud noises. That's not scaring. That's just surprising someone. And you want to be scary, you gotta go for the psychological horror. You gotta really mess with the audience member's mind, making them think that what they're seeing is real, but it's not, and it makes them question reality. The Messengers does this pretty well. There's like only one time that they use a jump scare, and it's during the scene where Jess walks into the barn and comes across the ghost boy and he attacks her. That's a jump scare right there. But from what I've seen, it is the one and only jump scare this movie uses. Aside from that, all the scares are done pretty subtly and through psychological horror. Like, I brought up earlier about the ghost woman coming through the wall. What I didn't mention is that throughout the movie, the mother of the family, Denise, is constantly trying to scrub away a stain that's on the wall. Well, if you remember from the beginning of the movie, the mother was actually thrown against the wall, leaving that stain. And now, in present time, the mother of the new family tries to scrub the stain away, but it just keeps coming back until finally the ghost woman comes out of it. Now that right there is a good scare. It's really good because it's subtle. It's building up the anticipation. Like, you see this stain on the wall. You don't know that it was from the mother of the previous family being shoved under the wall by her husband and where she died. You don't know until later on. And you see Denise constantly trying to clean this stain off the wall, but it just won't go away. It looks like she cleans it at one point, but then it just comes right back. And this keeps happening until near the end of the movie, the stain gets so big, and finally the ghost woman starts coming out of it. That's a good build up to a good scare. And there are a lot of subtle scares too. Like when the little boy Ben is telling, well, not verbally telling, but like signing to his mother that he sees something. When she asks, what is it that you see? He doesn't say anything for obvious reasons, but instead he pulls his two eyelids down, making a really creepy looking face, indicating that he sees one of the ghosts. That's a good subtle scare right there, because it's not it's not spelled out, for lack of a better term. It's actually visually given to us in a very, very minute way. And from the perspective of a young child who can't talk, that's actually a lot creepier, because this little boy can't speak, so he has to just use visual signifiers in order to show what he's talking about. And it's actually really interesting. What's another scare this movie does really well? I suppose at the beginning of the movie, it does a pretty good job of anticipating everything. Because in the beginning of the movie, when we see the first family being killed, you don't see what it is that kills them. You assume that it's probably some supernatural force, like the house was already haunted by something, and that's what's killing the entire family. But then later on, when the twist is revealed about who John Rowlands is, and we find out what actually happened to the family, that's good build-up. And that's a good twist right there. Because I don't know if horror movies have this. Like, most other movies you see, you have twist villains in the end, but they're not really horror. From what I figured, this movie does that twist pretty good. How John Rowlands is posing as this other guy, and he's just, working as the family farmhand. He seems pretty normal and unassuming, although it kind of seems like he came in out of nowhere, to be honest. His character doesn't have that proper of an introduction, but still, the twist of him being the one who murdered his family, who are now the ghosts haunting the house, that was actually pretty well done. And I like how they do it through, like, flashbacks or signifiers, just to show that. And I like how Jess is the one who figures it out. Oh, like, she's the one who finds out who he really is. Because to me, that makes the most sense. She's the only one, aside from Ben, but he can't speak at the moment. She's the only one who's actually been seeing the ghost haunting the house. But her parents don't believe her. When she finds out who it is that really killed the family, that's when stuff really gets crazy. I apologize for my dogs in the background. Sorry. I did this really fast because I had something else to do today, so I couldn't really edit this out. I tried, but I couldn't. But anyway, yeah, this movie does its scares pretty freaking well, and I like that. So now I think I should start wrapping up this video because it's going on for rather long, but suffice to say, The Messengers is a pretty good horror movie. It's not the gold standard, it shouldn't be held high up as the best horror movie ever. It's good. Not great, but good. And when it comes to a movie that should be emulated in other horror movies, it's not the gold standard, like I said, it's the bare minimum standard. It gets what most horror movies get it wrong right. It has subtle scares, the pacing is actually pretty good, it doesn't feel like it's moving too fast or too slowly, the characters are sympathetic, and you can root for them in their endeavors. The twist is actually pretty well handled. One complaint I do have of the movie is that I feel like they should have spent more time establishing the twist villain. Like I said, John Burnwell, who turns out to be John Rowlands, he kind of just comes in out of nowhere when he's first introduced. He doesn't get like that much of an introduction, so I feel like they should have fixed that a little bit. Like maybe have the Father Roy putting out flyers or ads for a farmhand, and then he bumps into him, and then he's like, oh hey, you're new here, well welcome to the town, and they have a little back and forth before then he hires him as a farmhand. I feel like that should have helped that a little bit. But aside from that, this is a pretty good movie, and I think other movies should emulate its style. The fact that it's produced by Sam Raimi probably tells you that it was actually, this was actually going to be a well done job making a horror film. He's done horror before, like I said, the Evil Dead movies. He's pretty good at it. And although The Evil Dead is over the top, whereas this movie is a lot more subtle with its scares. So I think he did a good job on that front. So yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, you probably should. It's good. It's a pretty good time. So yeah, this has been my 500 subscriber special. I can't even believe I have 500 subscribers. This is amazing. So I don't even know what I'm going to do when I eventually get 1K subscribers. I think I might talk about one of my favorite video game franchises if I do that. And if you know me, you know which one that is. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing when I get 1,000 subscribers. But for now, this was my special for my 500 subscribers. And I think it's pretty good. Not the best, but I felt like I wanted to do something special for this occasion. So, yeah, that's all for now. This is Toshi the Panda saying goodbye, have a nice day, remember to stay healthy, and don't forget to wash your hands.